Hey, everybody. Welcome to session 2 of your fabulous state conference. It's 10 a.m. and time to draw our 3 winners from the previous session. The first name is going to win Amy's book, The Future of Happiness. And then I don't know if, sorry, I'm just beginning. Pick winner, notify winner. Okay, you tell me how, do I do something? Sorry, everybody. My first time. Oh, pick winner. I see. I click on it. And I got my glasses on. I can see a name. Maybe. I can see a bunch of names. Hey, Yared Rivera. Congratulations. And then we've got 2 gift cards coming up. And make sure, Yared Rivera, that you let us know that you're here, and we'll have the Nevada Realtors send you your prize. And now we're going to do number 2 and 3, the gift cards, and then get to Mr. Morris. All right, pick. Here we go. Very exciting. Got to have my glasses on for this amount of excitement. Yeah, I'm seeing everybody's name. All right, we've got Moira Shea. And if I mess up your name, I'm going to apologize. And we got one more. Moira Shea, you win a gift card. Make sure that live support chat, contact them, and you will get sent your thing. Pick a winner. Here we go. And stand by, Mr. Morris. We're getting to you, I promise. Okay, and we have Denise Taylor. Look at that. Another gift card. So contact live support, not live support, live support, and we'll arrange to get you your prize. And as a warm-up to our next speaker, we want to show you what the Nevada Realtors Diversity Committee is up to, and we're going to see that right this second, I think.
I'm Sam Olsen, and it is my privilege to serve you on the Nevada Realtors Diversity and Inclusion Committee. There's been a focus on diversity in both the public and private sectors and across many industries. But housing impacts every aspect of a person's life. Where we live drives where we can work, what opportunities we have, and what resources we have access to. And this puts us, realtors, front and center in this effort. Whether we acknowledge it or not, we shape the communities we serve. To support our efforts, your committee has been working on a message to share our vision of how we can make the greatest impact to our clients and communities. The video will premiere in December at our state installation. Let's take a look.
For over 70 years, realtors have helped build strong, vibrant communities.
From mining towns and homesteads to today's cities and towns, realtors lead the way.
From the very beginning, Nevada was built by dreamers, visionaries, and adventurers
looking for a better way to make a place where everyone fits.
Carved from the mountains and springing forth from the desert, together we made that dream a reality.
Creating opportunity for those drawn here to seek it.
Wow, what a great segue to our next speaker. And we look forward to the finalized version of that in December. And our next speaker, who just happens to be a more than 35-year selling broker from Tennessee, currently serving as president of the Middle Tennessee Association of Realtors, and who also has an impressive array of designations behind his name, including, but not limited to, let's see if I can get these right, CRS, CRB, E-Pro, ABR, SRS, and believe me, folks, that's just to name a few. He recently presented the At Home with Diversity course for the Las Vegas Realtors 2021 and honored as Educator of the Year for Tennessee Realtors 2021, as well as always being wonderfully committed to raising the bar and making a positive difference in the lives of everyone he meets. And he's here today to share us and show us how the secrets of embracing diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm really happy to welcome Robert Morris.
Wow. Now, who can follow that kind of introduction? I will tell you, thank you so very much. It is a plum-pleasing pleasure to actually be addressing the Nevada Realtors group today. Of course, I would have loved that we had it live. I was in Las Vegas last week, had a great At Home with Diversity course with your fellow Realtor family members there. I even got to get to the nice stadium and see the Raiders actually win a game in overtime. So it was a great visit on last week, and I am just ecstatic about the opportunity to be with you all today. I want to talk to you a little bit about the secrets to embracing diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we keep hearing about this. This is one of the big buzzwords that everybody's been talking about for at least the last year and a half. And when we talk about those things, we always say, well, what is it about? And how do we make it work? And what does it mean to me? So you've already heard that I do a few things. I have been blessed to be in this real estate business for a long time. And I want you all to know after 37 years, you still can look good. Thank you all so very much. I appreciate you immensely. But here's what we're going to do. I'm going to welcome each and every one of you to your state convention. I think that you're going to have a wonderful time as you journey through the process of learning, sharing, and growing together. But I want to thank you for the opportunity today for allowing me to share a few thoughts with you on the secrets to embracing diversity, equity, and inclusion. And here's my hope. After the session, the challenge of leadership, of membership, to make a commitment to change, to do things differently than maybe we've done them before, to make a positive difference will be up to each one of us to do. Because if there ever is going to be a change, it starts with us. So how do we take that and we run with it and we make it right? Well, all of you would attest to that. We are in challenging times right now. We're dealing with health crisis. We're dealing with serious financial crisis. We're dealing with housing issues. We're dealing with racial tensions. All of that while trying to exist and create what we call new normal. And some have suggested that we're going to be with this normal for some time to come. It is not like it's going to go away and that we can start doing things the old way. So we got a new way of doing these things. Those challenging times are going to be for us. And here's what we talk about. In order for us to adjust and to acclimate ourselves to this new normal, this new way of life, I believe that we must do three things. One, we must adapt a new way of doing business and nurturing our personal relationships. Because I know that most of you all experience this lack of human interaction. And that is important for each and every one of us. We are going to have to embrace new opportunities to communicate with one another. As I tell people, I'm zoomed out, Robert. I'm just zoomed out. And I always say, well, guess what? We were able to do Skype. We were able to do those things long before Zoom came. We just were not forced to do those things. So now with this new normal that we're actually experiencing, we're having to embrace some new opportunities to communicate with one another. And then we need to develop and design business practices that will survive this crisis and carry you into the future in your real estate careers. So as we adjust to the new normal, let's talk about this DEI thing. Here's what I want you to know before we actually get too involved into this. First of all, acknowledging different people and culture is not necessarily about being politically correct, but it's really about becoming aware of the changing demographics of the real estate consumer and our country. And here's what I found to be totally mind-boggling for me. Last week in Las Vegas, they shared information that you guys were taking in. They were doing orientation at least once, sometimes twice a month. And I said, oh, okay. They said, we just can't handle the volume. And says, it's just coming and coming. I said, what are you talking about? They said, we take in on average 300 agents a month. And I like, what? They said, yeah, 300 agents a month are coming into the real estate business in the area of Las Vegas. And I was like, wow. I mean, we may have taken in Tennessee, in my area, maybe 300 in the first 6 months, but 300 a month. Can you imagine the changing, not only of the demographics of the real estate consumer, but even the demographics of the real estate professional that'll be practicing in our business? So we're not talking about PC stuff. We're talking about what is really happening and how do we recognize what that is. So what does it mean to embrace diversity? And we have people talk about it all the time. I'm glad you had the thought. So here's what it means: to consider all people as unique and to recognize and understand and even appreciate their individual differences. That's what it means to embrace the diversity that we all have. And those are the things that we all have in common as human beings. So, okay, embrace diversity. Okay, Robert, I do that. I got that part. So what else is a big deal? Well, there's this thing about social inclusion. And so by definition, it says this is the process of improving the terms of participation in society. That's what inclusion means, particularly for people who are disadvantaged, through enhancing opportunities, access to the resources, their voice, and respect for their rights. So when we talk about including individuals, it's going to be different. Here's the way I explain it to people. It is one thing to be invited to the dance. Man, it's great. You get the invitation and you didn't think you would, but you get invited to the dance. So you have been embraced to come to the party. But you're the one that's on the wall. You're the one that doesn't really know anybody. You're the one that is kind of out of place, so you think. And if nobody ever invites you to do anything else, then yeah, you were asked to come, but you really wasn't included in that. So what we talk about inclusion is what we say. It's not only being invited to the dance, but it's also being asked to dance. And then if you want to go a step further, not only is it being asked to dance, you might even ask them, says, what's your favorite song? And then you might have the DJ put their favorite song on when you ask them to dance. Now we talk about inclusion. So very often we just sort of do one of the two boxes. We don't check all of the boxes as they come through. And here's one I thought that would help you understand. A lot of agents talk about equity and they talk about equality. And I know they look similar. They got most of the alphabet that they contain is similar, just a few other additional words, but it's a big difference in what they are. So equality is providing the same level of opportunity and assistance to all segments of society, such as races and gender. So if we say equality, here's what I always tell people, laws create equality. We have a law that you can go to the school. Everybody has an opportunity to go to that particular school. We have laws that say everybody has a right to buy a house wherever they want. So we have a fair housing law, which creates equality, that everybody has an opportunity and the assistance to be able to do that. Okay, but here's what equity means. Equity is providing various levels of support and assistance for depending on the specific needs and abilities of somebody to achieve the greater fairness and the treatment and the outcomes. All right, so what did I just say? Equality, the law says everybody has a right to own a house wherever they want a house, wherever their money will take them, whatever their qualification is. But we all know that we sometimes don't practice what we preach. We know that sometimes there is somebody somewhere who may not be adhering to what the equality piece is supposed to mean. So what does the equity piece do? The equity piece levels the field. So people talk about it. So let me give you an example, a better example. Laws such as the Civil Rights Act of 1964, it provided equality for everybody, while policies such as affirmative action provide equity. Now, people go to talk about it and says, well, what do you mean? I looked this up. Say in education, equality means providing every student with the same experience. But equity means overcoming discrimination against specific groups of people, especially defined by race and gender. So everybody got to participate. Everybody can participate. But the playing field is not necessarily even all the time. So equality attempts in a fair way to actually help people overcome certain things that they didn't get to necessarily experience. They didn't get the same books in school. They didn't get the same teachers. They didn't get the same whatever. So how do we make the playing field a little bit more even, more equitable as we talk about it? So equality is a great thing, and we all have that. We all have that going for us, and that's a good thing. But what about the equity? Are we really playing by the rules that were established to create equality. Well, that's why we talk about fair housing, because we know that in some places people are still denied housing, even though there's an equality law that says that everybody should have the same rights to own a property wherever they want to own a property. Just a little bit of leverage for you. Here's the last piece on that. What is the difference between equality and equity? Well, the civil rights laws ensured equality of access to higher education, barring public colleges or universities from completely denying enrollment to any minority group. Doesn't matter what it is, right? These laws do not ensure equity in the levels of minority enrollment. To achieve equity, that's where the policy affirmative action came in, to increase the college enrollment. So it says that if we are always doing what we've always done, expecting to get something different, we call that the definition of insanity. And we know, based on that, if we as human beings, based on habit, we just do what we do, it doesn't mean I'm discriminating against anybody. I just do what I do. And what that does is close off other opportunities for other individuals. Not that I wanted to, but I already had somebody in mind who would make this thing work. So I was just continuing to go with this plan. Well, what happens is, if nothing interjects with that, how do we change? How do we do anything differently? Equality, the level playing field by law. Equity are the things that we do to ensure, as much as we can, that equality is actually obtainable. So when we talk to these pieces, here's what I want you all to know. One of the most important influences on human behavior and how we act is going to be our culture. How we were raised, the people who influenced us in our lives, because the culture consists of values and our belief systems, our system of language, our communication, and our practices that people share in common, and that we can be used to define us as a collective. I'm going to pick myself, for example, because culture impacts the way we think and the way we feel about our values and how we look at the world. And it's interesting when we talk about all of these pieces and I say, well, what do people really do? The people who influenced us in our lives, Uncle Bob and Aunt Sue, and pastor such and such, and priest such and such, and coach such and such, and mother and father, and the groups that we valued, those people who instilled in us certain things created our culture and sort of how we think about things and how we view things and how we look at things. For example, if I could divide the United States, not truly, but divided the line and call one side west and one side east, here's what you'd find. The people in the west would get labeled certain things. Tree huggers. Oh, they love the environment. They love this. They love that. Oh, they don't want this and they don't want that. The east side of the country would say, well, fossil fuels is where it is. This is our livelihood. This is how we've lived. This is how we provided for our families. Neither side is bad or neither side is wrong. Their cultures are just different. Their orientation to those things that are important in life are different. People in the West, when somebody in the East has a mind collapse on the people, they says, oh, that's so terrible, that's so sad, but they don't know what that experience is like. So people in the East who don't understand all of the fires that are going on and the droughts that are going on, they're saying, nah, man, that's really tough, but they don't understand it because they come from a different perspective. It doesn't mean one culture is worse off or bad than the other culture. It just says that it is different. And here's what we need to understand as human beings. Our thought processes have been affected by what culture we were oriented in. Our beliefs, our values, our mode of communication, all of that based on our culture. So let me tell you that it has a tremendous impact on your biases and on your prejudices that you might have. For example, here's my story. Now, you all heard in the introduction that I'm from Tennessee. And some of you may have made some assumptions about me being from Tennessee. Well, you see, I'm an only child of a middle-class family. My dad's self-employed. My mom has a master's and a PhD. I'm Southern, so I'm from Tennessee. Food, we really like it around here. Bible Belt region, yes. Football is our oxygen, like right up there next to oxygen in importance, right? I did have an opportunity to go to private school. I graduated from Middle Tennessee State University. In my former life, I majored in chemistry and biology with a minor in psych. So I've spent some time as a chemist, and I thought I was going to med school. Somebody challenged me to get in real estate, said I probably couldn't do it. 37 years later, I guess I showed them. And I'm a motorcycle enthusiast. Why do I give this story to you? Because you had some opinions about me. You didn't know what my articulation would be. Because some of us from the South talk slow, and we talk with a slang, and we do this, and we love to eat, and so we don't take things serious. So we have some stereotypes that maybe you would have thought about. But you see, I'm a little bit different. Here's what we say with stereotypes. Not everybody is like the stereotype that you have. Not everybody in that area fits that stereotype that is given. But here's what happens. In my culture, I love football. In my culture, I love food. In my culture, football is our oxygen. In my culture, we do things a little bit slower than maybe people in the West or in the North or in the East. But does that make me bad? Does that make me any different than anyone else who might be on this call? We need to stop separating ourselves based on what our culture says just by virtue of where we grew up and where we live. I'll give you one more example. Work with your hands. If you are in the Midwest, working with your hands has a totally different concept than if you're from Silicon Valley working with your hands. So you might ask somebody in the Midwest working with your hands and say, yeah, I grew up on a farm, these calluses that I thought I work with my hands, I started at 5 a.m. A person in Silicon Valley says, I am a programmer. I'm on a keyboard for 11, 12 hours a day, every single day, trying to fight off carpal tunnel. I work with my hands every day. Would you believe that there's a different concept based on where you come from about working with your hands? So is one better than the other, or is one just different than the other? When we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, we're saying celebrate the differences of what we really have, because at the end of the day, we have more in common than we have differently. Let me share a couple of thoughts with you as we go through. So now that you know a little bit more about me, what about personal implicit biases, of which we all have, by the way? We all know what a personal bias is, that we have a tendency to favor or have an unfavorable opinion or feeling toward a certain thing. I'll give you one right now. I am very, very, very biased to my football team from my state, which is the Tennessee Titans. And I have not gotten over our season opening loss to the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, I just want you to know that has affected the way I have done some of the things in my life. And it was really rough for me to come and go to Arizona and spend time in Nevada and all of these things when that was on my mind, right? But I made it through. But my personal and my implicit biases are there, just like yours are. And here's what we know. An implicit bias is a bias that we don't even realize that we have. We don't know why we act that way. We don't know what triggered it, but we just sort of that way. So an implicit bias, of which we all have, are usually unconsciously assigned stereotypical traits to a certain social group. So let me talk about myself just for a second. You see, when I am walking down the street and there's a person coming my way, and when they decide they step off the sidewalk or pause or wait because I'm coming in that direction, I often look at myself and I wonder, what have I said? What have I done? What did I do? Or is there some anticipation of something that I did? Or maybe when I get on the elevator, and depending on who's on the elevator, do they rescind to the corner and make themselves small, protective? And I go like, well, I thought I was looking good. I thought I was smelling good. I don't know what it was. But if you were to ask those people, why'd you do that? You know what they'd say? I don't know what you're talking about. That's not something I do. It's not something that I go through and I subject myself to. And the question would be, Well, how do they not know that they do that? That's implicit. What we do know about implicit biases is this. They're developed over one's lifetime, and they begin in our childhood. And what happens with that, such biases are often heavily influenced and reinforced by stereotypical representations of groups that we see in the media. So what I normally tell people is this: not every person that you see on the television screen in a particular race is a drug dealer or a bank robber or a mafia don or whatever. Here's what I remind people: it's television. Here's what I remind people as well. I says, those are actors and they audition for different parts. Now, no matter how we feel about Hollywood, and if there's certain groups that play certain particular pieces, do you know that can affect a person and the way they view and think about things? See, if you see that all the time, then you gotta, maybe I associate that with this group of people. And I always tell people that's not necessarily the case, but we have personal biases and we have implicit biases, and those are just normal things. Here's where the power comes in, is that when we recognize that we have these biases, that's the first step in order to work on them, to be able to make them better, to be able to change what those pieces are. And so I always tell people, here's a story that I'll tell you real quick. Culture. Sarah is watching her mother prepare holiday dinner. I want y'all to understand that. And in the holiday dinner that she's preparing, I blacked the screen out, by the way. In the holiday meal she's preparing, she has a 50-pound ham. I want you to imagine this, a huge, huge ham. And the first thing mom does is cut half of it off and throw it away. And so she prepares the other half, and it is just meat falling off the bones. If you're a connoisseur, da-da-da. Sarah says, Mom, why did you cut that off? She says, I don't know, but let's ask your grandmother. Let's ask my mom. They proceed to go ask Sarah's mom's mom and says, Mom, you taught me that I cut off half of the ham, I throw it away, I prepare the other half of the ham. And I was wondering, why did you do that? And her mom says, I don't know. I don't know. I was just taught that way. So they have the luxury of going to ask Sarah's mom's mom, right? Mom, why did you share that with us? Why did you pick that way? And here's what she said. She said, child, the pot that I had was too small to hold the entire ham. So I had to cut it off. Now, here's the thing that I'm asking. How many of us today are still doing things from our culture that we don't even understand why we do them? I know I'm guilty. I have this thing in my house about Christmas trees being up into the new year. My mom says they shouldn't be up, so we take them down. My wife says, why are we taking them down? I says, I don't know. I decided to ask my mom after all these years. She says, well, the old people said that's what we need to do. So no real good reason that we can put our finger on. But here's a question that I'm asking about culture, since it really impacts the way we see things and the way we think about things. How many of us on the call today are still practicing things from our culture, and we don't even understand why? We don't even know the rationale or reason behind those things. So here's what I always ask people. The way you're living today, is it the truth that other people put in you, or is it your truth that you have discovered? Now you're asking Robert, says, what do you mean, Robert? What are you saying, Robert? Here's what I'm saying. Let's just say you use a nice term. He says, Robert, I'm not prejudiced. I got people. I got friends just like you. I mean, I got really good friends just like you. And I would like to really say that is great. And here's the thing I would ask you. What if somebody told you a person like me was a bad person and you were taught that I was a bad person? But now that you're all grown up, you find out that I'm a pretty good guy. And the things that you were told about me, not really true. So here's how you address me. He says, you're not like everybody, man. You are just totally different. I love you, man. And I appreciate the compliments. But what he's really saying to me is that I've shattered, I've shattered the image of what you were taught that people like me may have been. And now how do you handle it? So here's a question that I ask you. Are you still living the truth that other people put in you? Coach, Boy Scout, Girl Scout leader, mom and dad, Uncle Bob, Aunt Sue. Are you still living that truth, which was theirs, or have you grasped your own truth to be able to move forward, to know that things may be different than what it was that your orientation and your culture would be? Here's a challenge that I'll give you. In order for us to move forward, in order for us to grow, and in order for us to change in a positive way, we got to capture our own truth. And we discover all of these good things that other human beings have. And that's how we move it forward. You guys are looking on the call, and I appreciate your attention. And it just kind of keyed one more story for me. Here's the last story I'll tell you about this. And it affected me. Where I live, I'm in a small town right outside of Nashville, about 30 miles. Not really a small town anymore. It's not a secret in Murfreesboro. But here's what I want you to know. We took and we sent our daughter, who's now 23 and engaged, but when she was little, 5K, 4K, we sent her to Middle Tennessee Christian School. 3 weeks in the school, everything's going well. I come home from showing houses one day, and my wife is consulting my daughter, and she's crying. I'm like, what is going on? What's happening? She said, well, Kaylin, that's my daughter, Kaylin Nicole. Kaylin was told by her friends they could no longer play with her anymore. Now, I didn't get upset right then. I had to think about it a little while. And I said to myself, how is it that 4 and 5-year-olds would say they couldn't play with someone? What had happened was the young people went home and told their parents who Kay was and what Kay looked like. And the parents said, you can't play with them anymore. Now, I destroyed my daughter because she didn't understand. And here's what I want you to know. The kids didn't understand either. That was something put on them by an adult who is their culture orientation was that maybe you're not supposed to play with people that look like my daughter. But the kids didn't know that. The kids did not know that there was an issue, that there was a problem there. Here's what I'm going to say one more time. If we're going to change anything going forward to make it a positive piece, we got to claim our own truths about how things are, and we perpetuate those and move those forward. So one more time on the rhetorical question, are you still doing things based on the culture that was instilled in you by other people, that truth, or are you using your truth today to move forward because you understand what it is and that a person like me is not really all that bad? Well, let's get into some more stuff. How can we get more diversified? How can we become more inclusive in our association, in our companies, and even in our personal lives? That is a question. And I'm here to be able to share a couple of things with you. And here's the first thing that people will say. I don't know how. Well, what is the best way to start, Robert? Well, how should we ask them? And I will tell you that I think that you should ask in a loving way, in a inquisitive way, in a personal way. Because here's what I will tell you all on this call. There are people who want to know things about you, but have yet to communicate with you. Just like you'd want to know things about me and have yet to communicate with me. The reason we cannot grow is because we fail or lack the ability to communicate with one another. Why do you do this that you do? I was just curious and wanted to understand. And then when you understand, you say, oh, okay. Doesn't mean that you accept it. Doesn't mean that you would do it that way. But now you understand where they're coming from. Well, there are things about you that I want to know too. And then I would need to ask you, why do you do this? Why do the people around you do? And that way we get understanding from one another. And when we have understanding, then we can be more, amenable based on where people are. Doesn't mean that I agree with them. Doesn't mean I have to go with their side, but at least I now know. So how do we ask them? Find ways, in a loving way, to ask. What is the best way to start? Start with yourself. What would you like to know about me? What do you think about us? I know you got some questions about it. Would that be cool? Let's just have a conversation. How should we start? So let's go in and let's look at each individual area real quick. The first one is going to be the association. And we'll go from the association to professional recruiting, and then we'll go to client outreach, and then we'll say, what is the realtor's role actually in all of this stuff? Well, in the association, I always say, as we go across the country, and and by the way, associations are taking huge leaps. We have done probably 20, 25 associations on the state level that have gone and had their staff get certified in at home with diversity, because that is a certification that the staff proudly can earn from NAR and proudly display behind their names, just like C2EX and some other pieces. We wanted them to know what the realtor members are being taught. And at the same time, we realized that they were human beings, that they had personal biases and they had implicit biases, and it would be good for them to kind of discover what they are. So we've done that on the leadership level from state and local associations. And Phoenix was the first association in the state of Arizona to get all of their people on the staff level. Phoenix Realtors was the first one because they wanted to be in that area. But here's what I always tell you. Association leadership, we want and need your input is what you need to say to people. People want to feel a part of. People want to feel that they are valued. People want to understand and feel that their input matters. So how does association leadership grow? It's leadership in diversity, equity, inclusion. Well, you got to ask people, invite people, let them know that you would like for them to play a part. Here's what we know. When I'm teaching the At Home with Diversity course, we always say there are three pieces. We embrace diversity and inclusion. We got to live diversity and inclusion. And we need to have all of those pieces of how we make them equitable. So here's what we say. Checking the first box of hiring people doesn't get it done. When you just hire somebody, but yet you don't include them as part of the fabric of the company, they won't stay. If you think about it, if I hire people who are from all kinds of mixes, I got a whole different set of jelly beans in there, right? And I got so many people, and they're all different. But all I do is hire them. I don't ask their opinion. I don't ask for their input. I don't recognize any of the holidays that matter to them. They have to just recognize the holidays that matter to me. And they don't feel like they're a part. So why would they stay? And then, do they have any upward mobility? Do they have the possibility for promotion? Do they have the possibility to go up and expand themselves? Think about yourself. How long would you stay somewhere that was a dead end? That they didn't value you, they didn't care, they didn't ask you anything, they didn't acknowledge anything that matters to you. And it was a dead end place that you couldn't be promoted, you couldn't go up or whatever, you wouldn't stay. So companies who check the box of saying, I hire diverse people, will always be hiring because they haven't done the other critical pieces of inclusion and equity to say that there's upward mobility and a possibility for advancement as well. So when we talk about these pieces, this is what we share with them. What can the association do to help you become more successful in your career? We ask for the associations to ask the question, are they really providing the services that the individual members need to help them be successful in their business? And the best way we tell them to do that is to ask. Ask, are we providing you with the pieces that you need to help you succeed in your market? And then, of course, how can we get more minority involvement? Well, I remember I talked about the dance. Remember I talked about not only being invited to the dance, but being asked to dance when I get there. That inclusion piece is going to be important. They want to know that you value them, that you need them, that you care to listen to what their input is. I believe the outreach just has to be there. And we're teaching more and more associations on how they do this. Now, why are we lacking in diversity? We have taught from Washington State to Florida, from California to Rhode Island and Connecticut. And we've been in areas where people say, We're 97% non-minority, Robert. How in the world can we can't get in any minority? So here's what I tell people all the time. The fair housing law is not a black or white issue. The fair housing law covers everybody. As a matter of fact, it covers everybody on this call. And people go like, well, what are you talking about, Robert? We always kind of frame it in black or white. But here's what the law says. Everybody has a right to fair housing. And what do? They say realtors can sell houses really fast now. Race, color, religion, sex, handicap, familiar status, and national origin. And I would say on this call, there's a lot of people who may necessarily think they look alike because of the complexion of your skin. But some of you have German background, some of you have Irish background, some of you have Polish background, some of you have French background, some of you have Australian background, some of you have, so you are not all the same. So when we talk about diversity, diversity is not just in color. It could be male and female, that's diverse. It could be those who have kids, familiar status, and those who don't, because those who don't have kids may not have a clue. It could be national origin, which could be different. It could be race, yes. It could be color, yes. It could be disability. Some that we can see and some that we don't see. It could be a gamut of things that we call diversity that has nothing to do with color at all. So when NAR actually posed this piece where they added the core standards, over 50% of the associations across the United States did not have a diversity committee. So I commend you all. And the video looks like it's going to be exciting that your diversity committee is going to roll out. I'd love to see the finished product. 50% did not have a diversity committee, and most of the others did not know what to do. Here's what I'm going to tell you, rule. Don't put everybody who's diverse on diversity committee. You need some people who are not diverse on the diversity committee so they'll know what diversity is. You don't go find all the people who are diverse, diversity people, and put them on a committee and just camp them out on the committee. It needs to be other people so that there's a growth and an understanding of what diversity is. And it crosses all lines. It crosses all genders. And everybody is covered, right? So there's no one piece that is not covered in that basis. So do we have an inclusive workplace is what we ask associations. They have to kind of answer that question themselves as they're going through. How do they make it work? Now, if we go from that, then what about professional recruiting? We've had some associations we talked to about, have they thought about, I always ask people when you go and you get good service at a restaurant, when you're able to go, and you see somebody who's doing a marvelous job, I go in and ask them, I says, you know what, you've done such a marvelous job and your personality just beams. Have you ever thought about an exciting and rewarding career in real estate? And we ask the question, would you like to know more? Right? So when we talk about this professional recruiting piece, have we asked people to come? And right now they're coming in droves in our business. We also always say, what if we had a mentoring or an apprenticeship program? Would you try real estate? Indiana Association of Realtors is starting to kick off, starting the first of the year. They have a mentoring and apprenticeship program. Not everybody wants to sell real estate, so I introduced to them. I says, why don't you all look to have an apprenticeship on the backside, whether it be MLS or whether it be the GADS program or whether it be in the education and so forth and so on. Because not everybody wants to sell real estate. They go like, oh, wow, we had never thought about an apprenticeship program for somebody who's wanting to know what the office side of things are. So we have associations that are stepping up and doing some things in that area. So I just give you that as food for thought. Also, what about we offer other positions in the industry? Front office, back office, GAD, MLS, education department, and the like. So we have a mentoring program in starting real estate career. That would be great. We have a mentoring program in the back office piece that people would get to know what that's like and what that would be about. You want to recruit and have different people come in and understand what our industry is about, then we have to have an outreach program that we might actually go out and try to address those people with. So as I give you the thought, what about the client outreach program? All successful businesses know that the wider their tent, the broader they are, the wider they cast their net, the more likely they are to get in more potential people, in our case, members, right? And strengthen the association or strengthen our offices and our companies. So we need to have a widened or broad intent to be able to accommodate more people as the demographics change in our industry. We need to look and be welcoming. And I'll ask all of you on this call as realtors, if you have not taken At Home with Diversity, I would encourage you to do it. But I would ask the question in the class, is your business set up to attract people who may be of different persuasion? And the reason we ask is that we would ask, do you know the top 3 or 4 countries of origin of immigrants to Arizona? And you might say Mexico, you might say Guatemala, Nicaragua, you might say, but here's the case. Zig Ziglar said it best. How do we hit a target that we cannot see? Better yet, how do we hit a target that we don't even have? If I were to ask you, are you having the materials? Is your business set up to look welcoming for a gamut of people that you would have an opportunity to do business with? If you couldn't answer just yes, then we probably need to do some work. Do you have a bilingual, multilingual team member on your team? Are any of your marketing pieces printed in any other language other than English? And if so, what would that language need to be? If they were to go to your website, can they look at the properties in any other language? What about hearing impaired or a person with a disability? Can they go to your website and view properties just like anybody without a disability could do on your website? Have you done any of those pieces? So when we talk about widening or broadening the tent, understanding what this diversity, equity, and inclusion piece is, there's work that we recommend that we do. Know your demographics. Who is there? Because here's what we do know. In order to hit the target, we have to know what the target is. We have to know who those individuals are. So if we do the demographic and it identifies who they are, then we have to address their pain point, or we have to provide the need for the product or service that they have to have. We address the pain point, or we provide the needed product or service that they are needing to do what it is that they need to do. Well, first of all, we got to know who they are. And then we got to find out what that pain point is. And once we do that, we create the marketing materials that will relate to the desired audience that we have. So I want you to understand, as we're going through, these are the components that we're teaching, that you're saying you want to be diversified, you want to be more inclusive, you want to have more equity position. How do you do that? I identify my target. I address their need of a product or service. I create the marketing materials and I give it to them. That's how I grow this thing called my business, and it grows in diversity, equity, inclusion. What about the realtor? Now, we've been bombarded with this, I will say. People have been talking about it all the time. So what is it? That is a question. What is it that we are really having to do? What, how, why, when, and what if? So I'm glad that you had the question. So I'll do it this way. What is a realtor's role? Well, the United States has struggled to overcome a history of prejudice and discrimination in an effort to live up to its highest ideas of equality for everybody. Now, what was granted on paper with the 13th Amendment, 14th Amendment, and all the laws that Congress passed were soon overridden or ignored by the Jim Crow laws. So what was promised on paper was never really actually granted in practice. Those laws established what they call separate but equal. That's where the water fountains were different. Black Americans legalized discrimination, denied equal access, and the opportunity in all aspects of society, that including home ownership. Now, as I go to this point, these laws endured for nearly 100 years, well into the 20th century, until the 1960s. And at that time, it went away with the creation of the Fair Housing Act. But let me ask the question. People are saying, well, Robert, I didn't have anything to do with that. I didn't have anything to do with that. That was not me. And here's what I'm going to say to you. You're absolutely right. You had nothing to do with that. But here's who did. Our brothers and sisters that preceded us had some things to do with that. They played some critical roles in those particular areas, along with our federal government. We're not saying that anybody now did anything, but what we talk about history is this. Those of us who ignore it or refuse to accept it or hear about it are destined to repeat it. So all we do is make sure that we understand it so that we never go down that path again. And therefore, it gives you understanding when someone is upset on one side and you don't understand why, because it's always been this way. They know some history or maybe something that you wouldn't know. Doesn't mean that you side with them, but it means that now you have an understanding of where they're coming from. So what is this big deal? What is the big deal that we're talking about? You see, in the early 20th century, discrimination was an ethical mandate for realtors. And a lot of realtors did not know this. This is our code of ethics. It is obsolete now, thankfully. This was 1924. And I'm going to show you Article 34. It said that a realtor should never be instrumental in introducing into a neighborhood a character of property or occupancy, members of any race or nationality, or any individuals whose presence will clearly be detrimental to the property values in their neighborhood. Now, here's what I want you to understand. This was the law. This was the rule. And realtors could get in trouble if they did not adhere to the code of ethics. So when we talk about what's the involvement, what's the big deal, we're just saying, hey, we're going in a different direction. We're going as far as we can away from what this was to be better in what we do. But in order to know why, we have to give you just a little bit of the history of where it comes from. So here's what we will tell you. How can realtors help? This is always a great question. And I always like to share it. It says, well, segregation, it didn't happen by accident. Yeah, because a broad range of actors, including the federal government, banks, real estate agencies, they ensured for decades that African Americans would be kept out of new homes and flourishing neighborhoods. That was just the plan. It's okay. So by building an inclusive business, expanding home ownership, providing buyers with a broad range of housing choices, today's realtors can help create an America where no one is denied the opportunity to own a house or a home, to build wealth, and even to prosper, on account of their race. That is always a big thing that we talk to them about, and we want to make sure that they can have that opportunity for that. So why DEI? Why focusing on this piece? Is for understanding, it's for knowledge, and it's for growth. And to say we as realtors who make dreams come true and help people own a piece of America, that should be a really big, lofty goal for us to do. And it should be inclusive of everyone. So President Charlie Opera issued the challenge this year of the 3 pieces that he wanted. Implicit Bias, which is a 1-hour video free. Fair Haven, which is an awesome simulation. You go through 6 weeks. You got to sell 4 homes in 6 weeks, and it takes you through different fair housing scenarios. And I think everybody should take the trip of doing Fair Haven as well. And then, of course, he challenged you all and me as well to have our At Home with Diversity certification. Those were the 3 pieces. That's what our current president did. But what did our last president do? Vince Malta from California, he got together with then Secretary of HUD, Dr. Ben Carson, and they created the ACT program. Accountability that they have, all of the pieces of continuing and training so that all realtors would actually know how we should be doing what we need to be doing in our business. And that's kind of where this perpetuated. So it just didn't start this year. This has been something that NAR has been changing to make a reality for some time. So it just didn't start like right now. And a lot of people were like, well, why so into it now? It's not. It's a piece that we've been ongoing with to help us do a better job at what we already do, and that's make dreams come true and help people on a piece of America. Now, as I start to wind this down, I want to tell you a couple of pieces. Not quite, but a couple of pieces, and then we'll have some question and answers should you have some for me. I'm going to be an open book for you all to be able to ask. But if we talk about the differences, if I were to tell you guys right now that if you were on a donor's list, say you needed a heart or a kidney or a liver to live, and you finally got the call to show up at the hospital because the organ was on its way, I cannot recall a single case where the person who needed the organ asked, who did it come from? Well, wait a minute. Now, who did it come from? I don't know of a single case. Now, maybe there are, but what I know that most people are, they're just thankful that there is an organ coming. So I give you the example that if I were to cut my arm right here, I would bleed, and I would bleed red. And it would be similar to the red that you probably would bleed. And if you went further to examine my tendons and muscles inside of my wrist, you would note that they probably look a lot like yours. So when I go to think about the differences, are you saying our outward appearance, because we look a little different than one another on the outside, is worth all the chaos that we see? What I will tell you is that we are more alike than we are different. We have more things in common than we have not. So as we go through this walk that we're talking about, how about we focus on the things that we have in common and not necessarily the things that we don't have in common as we try to make this place a better place. So here's the last piece that I'll drill into you so that you know. And I like for people to have clarity about prejudice and discrimination. And I'll give it to you in layman's terms, right? Prejudice is an internal issue. It is something that is personal with me or you, okay? It is a personal thing that we have. And I'm going to tell you that everybody on this call is prejudiced. And then people would, like in class, they would get all upset. What's wrong? No, I'm not. I'm wrong. My best friends are. Yes, you are. You're prejudiced. You know how you're prejudiced? You're prejudiced to where you live. You're prejudiced to what you drive. You're prejudiced where your kids go to school. You're prejudiced to where you worship. You are prejudiced to the type of ice cream that you want. You're prejudiced to the type of team, the sports team that you like over the other team that you don't like. You're prejudiced in a lot of ways. It doesn't make you bad. It just makes you an individual and make you different. Prejudice is not a bad thing because it's personal with each one of us. That's not a bad thing. But discrimination is the action directed on another person based on our internal issues, based on what's prejudice with us. So here's the last story. It goes like this. There's 4 guys that show up at a Ruby Tuesdays, Red Lobster, or Fridays. They're going to have a couple of beers and some wings, and they're all friends. They get in there and they start talking about the trucks they drive. One drives a Ford, one drives a Chevy, one drives a Dodge, and one drives a Nissan Titan. And they start talking about, well, I'm a Ford truck man. And then the guy says, well, that's found on the road dead or fix or repair daily. Ain't laughed. The Chevy guy says, well, you all wrong because you got to drive a Chevy. Well, the Dodge Ram guy says, no. I'm going to tell you something. You got to have a Ram. But the Nissan guy says, all of y'all, I've got more towing capacity. I got more power. I got more speed. So all of you, just forget about it. Well, as they're drinking these libations, they sort of get loose. The guy that drives the Titan heads to the men's room. 2 of the other guys go out front. One takes a key and keys his vehicle. The other one takes a pocket knife and flattens his tires. You see, when they were in Fridays talking about their different prejudices, everything was cool because everybody has a right to like what they like and what they don't like. That was okay. No problem whatsoever. It is okay to voice your opinion about what you like and what you don't like. Not a problem whatsoever. I might not agree with what you say, but it's okay for you to feel your way and okay for me to feel mine. But discrimination says that, I didn't like the way you whatever. So I went outside and I did something to your vehicle or to you. That is when prejudice crosses over to discrimination. And here's what we will tell you. This is where anybody gets into trouble because it is not illegal to be prejudiced. It's not. There's not a single law against that at all. But it is illegal to discriminate against another person, particularly those in a protected class. And what have I already told you about that? All of us are in the protected class. There's not a single one of us who is not in the protected class for whatever reason. Children, sex, handicap or disability, race, color, religion, all of those things. None of us are not included in a protected class. That's the beauty of the equality in the law. But here's what I will tell you. Prejudice is a taught or a learned response. We were not born, and when we came out and we were slapped on the butt, we were not born to say, okay, you'll be prejudiced, you won't be prejudiced. You'll be prejudiced, eeny, meeny, miny. That is not what happens when we're born. Prejudice is something that is taught. Therefore, it is a learned response. So if we stop teaching it, it'll probably go away. And those who learned it over time, who find out that the truth that they were using was not theirs, and it was someone else's, and they start to use their own truth, it'll go away. So when we talk about all of these pieces and we say, where do these things come from? Let us seize the opportunities that we have before us. A need for us to come together, to move back to respecting each other, treating each other like we want to be treated, or even better than we wanted to be treated. We need to open lines of communication with one another. We need to accept our differences in tolerance, not always agreeing, but allowing a difference of opinion will go a long way to mending fences and creating a better world for all of us that are involved in it. So what I'm going to say at this time, with about a couple of minutes left, is that thanking each and every one of you for your attention and your time today. This is a small snippet of how we share DEI with the intent and the hope of having better understanding with one another, to create better communication with one another so that we can treat one another better. Because at the end of the day, we have more in common with one another than we have that is different. So I'm going to encourage your DEI committees. I'm going to encourage you all as individuals to make your steps to be able to do this and to make our industry and our world a better place. I thank you. I miss you. I did want to be in Lake Tahoe, and I love you. So thank you all so very much.
Oh, that was just fantastic. It's a lot to think about and so much presentation. It's almost as if you were watching the Q&A while you were doing it, because you answered so many things. I mean, it's amazing. And I'm sure more questions will be coming in. And I know that they noted that we'll definitely let you know about the video when it's all done in December. But all the comments were just, wow, how impactful and wonderful, and grasping your own truths. And so thank you so very, very much for all that information that everybody's just impacted by. It certainly was wonderful to listen to, and I don't know anything about the business, so thank you. And yeah, and so I'm telling you, all the questions that we saw, and I think we're just going to move on, and maybe they can contact you after if there were some specifics. And I know that's so great. The next event is going to be happening, and you're going to want to clear out of this in a minute. The next one's going to start, the Nevada Politics in Play. There's awards. They've got, you can win an AHWD training course and 2 gift cards, and the people from this one will be in that one. You got to be present to win. But thank you so very, very much, Robert Morris, everybody, and click out of this, and we'll start with the next one and we'll see you in just a minute. Thank you again very, very much. Bye-bye.